Hello and welcome to the reading from Agastya, the Siddha Principles, based on the sacred discourses of Agasthyar Vazhipaadu. Last week, we were talking about the ascension of Kundalini, that great power that is present in each human being at the base of the spine. And Agastya was telling us what happens as it awakens each chakra, or as it ascends and touches each chakra. So last week we talked about how having purity in husband and wife relationships, having purity in our intent as we live in this world. So we were talking about the Manipura, the Muladhara chakra, which is the base chakra, which is connected to the earth element. And then we were talking about the Swadhisthana chakra, which is the sacral center connected to our sexual organs, and which is connected to the water element. Today, we will talk about the Manipura chakra, the third chakra, or the third main chakra, because there are many, many chakras or energy centers in the human body, but there are 7 which are the primary ones. And we are talking about the conduit or the energy flowing from the Muladhara chakra, the Kundalini energy moving from the Muladhara chakra and ascending through Sushumna, which is the energy conduit, which is almost corresponding to the spinal area of the human body. Now, in Manipura chakra, let us see what Appa says. Manipura chakra is related to relationships. If there is no natural link between parents, children, or siblings, then in that place arises the characteristics that result in cheating. This will affect and create a lot of problems in that person's family life and relationships. Now, what does Appa mean? So, Manipura chakra is the very basic chakra where we are connecting with our very close family members, between parents and children, between siblings. And what happens is, if you look around you, if you see any issues between parents and children or siblings, and especially between parents and children, if the children feel that they have not been given enough love from the parents, then that carries on to their adult life. So many people who have been abused by their parents or scolded unnecessarily, or beaten and subjected to a lot of physical and mental and emotional harm, continue that cycle of abuse as they grow older in their other relationships. Now, one thing we must remember when we talk about Manipura chakra and also the relationship between family members is this. When every soul decides to come back to the earth to take a rebirth, it chooses the family it wants to be born in. So, we have a lot of people, as we have talked about before, who say, hey, why was I born to this family? Why did I deserve this? It's because the soul chose to do that. Why is that? Remember, any strong love or hate that you establish with any other soul during your sojourn on earth in any one of your lives will attract that soul back to you. So, for example, you hate somebody so much, then you yourself as a soul create a situation where that soul comes as your daughter or your father or your mother or your sibling, because it is in that close relationship that you can understand how to get over the feelings of anger and hatred towards the other soul. It's a great opportunity because those souls have been brought to us to learn a lesson. We may have hated them when we were in another life as a friend or associate, but now they are now very close to you in a very close family relationship. And now you have given yourself a chance to overcome that lesson and learn that and begin to love everybody with the same unconditional love that is very important to foster as a spiritual aspirant. So whether it is siblings or parents and children, whatever the relationship is, when there is a impurity in that, because the souls haven't learned the lesson and they continue that cycle of hatred or anger, then it creates more and more and more complex situations for each soul as they grow, and each soul as they come back again with another birth. Now let's go to the next chakra. So now the Manipura chakra is associated with fire. Then we go to the Anahata chakra. The Anahata chakra is where we were talking about. We are talking about love and emotions. So let's see what Appa says. This chakra brings out elements like love and emotions. When Kundalini reaches this chakra, if the person does not have purity and love, then conflict arises between people. Where love is absent, differences come forth and relationships get cut. They may suffer from heart problems. So remember, whatever happens in our emotional and physical, mental level affects our physical level also, which is the reason we undergo many of the diseases that we have. Because without right thinking, by fostering all these negative emotions, we create negative energy that affects us. So anger does not hurt another person as much as it affects you. Everything has a power. If you're very angry towards somebody and you send hateful thoughts, those thoughts do have power. And if that person is in a receptive stage where they are not protected by love and protection of a guru or God, then if they open up their hearts to some kind of a negative emotion, then that anger or hatred energy that you have sent to them will affect them. But more than anybody, that arrow that you have let go will affect you more than it affects the other person. That is why, as spiritual aspirants, it becomes very, very important to try and change the way we feel about others, because emotions, as we have already talked about, is the most powerful thing that we have as a soul, as a created individual, or a soul that is connected to the ego, to be able to connect to higher consciousness. But we misuse that great tool when we allow anger and hatred towards others to come into our hearts. So that is why Appa says relationships get cut. So whatever kind of relationship it is, if there is no pure love, then that relationship will break. But because the relationship breaks, we have to come back again, maybe have them as parents or siblings like we talked about, and learn to begin to love them despite all the anger between you both. So the other thing, if you remember, if there is pure love between two souls, say for example friends, they will not talk to each other maybe for 3-4 years, but when they connect again, there is no it seems like there has been no time has passed. It's like they just pick up where they left off, because it is that inner connection that continues to bind them together. That same kind of connection can carry over in different lifetimes. So that is why when you see somebody and you immediately feel a feeling of love or friendship towards that person, you've known that soul before, you've already established a beautiful connection with that soul. And think about it. How beautiful would life be for each one of us if we could do this with every soul we come in contact with? And how can we do that? Because we are so caught up in judging people. And it is natural, we judge people and we say, oh, this person does this thing wrong and this person has this kind of characteristic. But as spiritual aspirants, we got to start looking at each soul as coming here with the same divine qualities that you have, but expressing it in a different way and walking their own path, because each soul has its own path of, going towards its final realization. And they are probably at a different level than you. And it is okay to begin to Not look at the outer side of the person or their behavior or the way they act, but start recognizing that soul within. That is the most important thing that will help a spiritual aspirant, purify the area of emotions, which is the Anahata chakra, the heart chakra, which is connected with the element of air. Now, why am I talking about all these different elements of, with the Muladhara chakra, the earth, the Swadhisthana chakra, the water, the Manipura chakra, the fire, and then now the air? Because the primeval 5 elements, as I said before, exist within us. Creation exists within us. And to understand this, when we start reading the book Agastya Yoga Siddhanta, we'll understand how to become conscious of that, how the individual ego becomes conscious as the earth material in Muladhara, then comes to the water material, where it is life-giving water, where there's the ability to create new life. Then Manipura, where creation takes place, because creation takes place through the element of fire. And then we come to the air, which is the creative existence of what we're seeing. And then from there, we go higher to the Vishuda chakra, then the Ajna chakra and the Sahasrara, where we are leaving behind all these creative elements and becoming conscious of the higher levels, and finally attaining complete liberation. So we will talk about it in length later. So now let's come to what happens when we go to the Vishuddha chakra. Vishuddha chakra is in the throat region. Appa says, this chakra is located at the throat. If a person curbs his emotion and curses others within, he will have such emotions like hatred. Relationships again get cut. Diseases related to the throat may develop in such people. Now, let us, as we understood now, all energy, whether it is emotional or mental, can have physical effects. And when you're angry with somebody, try to talk it out. Don't curb it. Don't curse another person. And it becomes so important when I see the bad words being used in this world so freely and so easily, not to do that, because they all have energy. The more bad words you're using, the more negative energy you're emitting. Think about that. You have the power in your speech to spread only positive energy. Try to curb the use of bad language like swear words. It's not necessary in this world. So also do not curb your emotions. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to express being upset or frustrated, do it, but do it in a nice way. Try to understand, try to explain. Or if you cannot do that with the other person who's involved with you, with whom you're having these negative emotions, then learn to understand it within yourself. Come to terms with it. It is that important. Otherwise, it's going to affect your throat area. You're going to have problems with that. Then let's go forward. We are going to, then throat is the ether or space element. And that is the level of getting consciousness of the individual ego, learning that there is something more than this created world. So that, again, as I said, we will talk about it much in depth later. Then we come finally to the Ajna chakra. The Ajna chakra is between the eyebrows. Many people think in the current world that the Ajna chakra is in the center of the forehead here, like Shiva's third eye. It is not so. It's actually between the 2 eyebrows. Here Appa says, it is the chakra that helps man attain knowledge and also to protect it. When Kundalini attains this chakra, if the knowledge of that person is impure, then this may cause psychic issues. Again, we are now talking about another very important chakra, which is the Ajna chakra. It's the chakra of knowledge, higher consciousness. This, and in Vazhipaadu, Appa talks about 3 chakras through which we can get cosmic or higher knowledge. These are centers of knowledge. One is the Anahata, one is the Ajna, and the other is the Sahasrara. So in Ajna chakra is a portal of knowledge. So this chakra must remain pure, which means thoughts. thoughts. So how do you have pure thoughts? Again, going back to the basics, watch what you see, what you hear, what you say, what you think. All this will lead to becoming purer and purer as you go forward. So if you do not have purity there, it is possible through hatha yoga and other yoga practices to come all the way up. But if there is impurity, it's going to cause psychological problems. That's what Appa is saying here. Then we come to the final chakra, which is the Sahasrara chakra. Once Kundalini ascends and crosses all other chakras and attains the Sahasrara chakra, if man does not have devotion to God, then he becomes distorted or ugly in nature. Being subjected to extreme conditions, even though alive, he will live like a man without life for a long time as a man without self-awareness. That is the danger. So, as spiritual aspirants, as we start purifying ourselves and we practice our sadhana as the Kundalini arises, if we do not have devotion to God, if that purity is not there, then we can get to a stage where we will be like Ashwatthama. If you remember that, in Mahabharata, we have a beautiful example. Ashwatthama, great warrior, was cursed by Krishna because he targeted a life, an innocent life. So he was cursed to live forever, to eternity, without anything that is so important for the manifested soul, without awareness, without connections with others. So when such a thing happens, and very rarely do most of us get to that level with a lot of impurities, because it's hard for us to ascend to that level in the normal course of practice. It's a very high practitioners ascend to that level. But when they do, and they still have impurity, and we'll talk about that, there are people who use the dark arts. They use these great powers that they're able to evoke through some practices, like black magic or dark arts, and they can get a power, but they are forever cursed, or they go into the worst possible loka, as we talk about in the Indian system, and they remain there for a long time. So that is why it's so important for all of us in the spiritual field to purify ourselves at every day, every moment. And if we look at all this, why is Appa always talking about relationships and connections and etc. in each of the chakras? Because as an individual ego, whether you're connected with the family, whether you're connected with the social life, with office, community, it's all your relationship with another which affects everything. Remember, we talked about it. Most of the karma that we acquire is because of our relationship with another soul. So understand this very basic thing. If we do not establish a good relationship with other souls, by proper understanding that all souls are divine and equally have the right to go through whatever experiences they're going through, we will continue to harbor all these negative thoughts and emotions, and that will keep us tied to the individual ego which has manifested. But as spiritual aspirants, our goal is to let go of all that and find liberation. That is why, if you look at it, no matter which religion or which spiritual teacher whose work you're referring to, they always talk about the very basic thing, dharma, righteousness. Look at Christ. He talked about love and forgiveness. You look at the 10 commandments. It's basically, you cannot do this, you cannot steal, you cannot, lust of another man's wife, things like that. If you look at what Buddha said, he comes to it from a different angle. He looks at it from the point of suffering, and because you wonder why you're suffering, understanding what suffering is, then you begin to have the eightfold path, which is the right intent, right knowledge, and all that stuff. So all that boils down to what Appa says, which is first the basic foundation of understanding. Because of understanding, correcting a righteous a behavior to righteous life. So dharma, righteous life, knowledge and dharma, knowledge and righteousness become again the basic foundation of all spiritual aspirants. So I know many of us go to meditation classes, join ashrams, we go meditate, but are we changing ourselves in a day-to-day life? And that is the key here. If we don't, you can keep going up and then you fall back, and you get to a stage where you might even end up like Ashwatthama, and we don't want that. Now let's talk about Granthis. So Appa says Brahma Granthi, Vishnu Granthi, and Shiva Granthi are the three things connected with three important chakras. So normally a Granthi is considered a knot. However, there is no physical knot found there as is often thought. It is the impurity in that area that is considered the knot. Hence, if all the knots need to be untied, one must have purity in body, mind, action, and intellect. If there is any dirt in any of this, then the power of the Kundalini will affect it and induce a lot of suffering. So now, what are Granthis? That's another word that's bandied around in the meditation circles in the world. They are not physical knots. They are just congestion of energy because of doubts, self-doubts, because of impurities in how we behave, how we think, how we act. So the basic or the main Granthi is in the Brahma Granthi, which is at between the Muladhara and the Swadhisthana, the base chakra. Okay. And then we have the Vishnu Granthi, which is in the Anahata chakra. And then we have the Shiva Granthi, which is in the Ajna chakra area, the Rudra Granthi as it is called. Now, if we want to, pierce those Granthis or unlock those knots, once again, what is needed? As Appa says, purity in body, mind, action, and intellect. So what happens as people talk about, hey, this person is spiritually advanced. So as you pass through different chakras, you begin to have different kind of emotions or different kind of understanding or awareness. So that is why those who pass the Vishnu Granthi or cross that, and with the Anahata chakra and cross that, they are more creative. That's why creative people are more closely connected to higher consciousness, whether they are aware of it or not. Because in being creative, you're connecting to a higher level than the manifested world. You are using the power of the mind. The mind is a very, very powerful tool, but it is the tool of the ego. So again, as spiritual aspirants, what are we really doing when we walk on the path, when we try to meditate? We are not trying to learn something. We are unlearning things. How is that? Because we are born with the mind and the body and the soul, but we are not aware of the soul. And the mind holds on to the ego consciousness. And because the mind holds on to it, we continuously create more and more karma through our actions and our thoughts and the deeds. And we remain caught up in the cycle that we call life and death and rebirth. But what is that we need to do? Purify ourselves and detach ourselves from the mind. Because mind needs the vehicle of the body or the ego, the manifested ego, but consciousness does not need it. Consciousness is. So that is why when you don't ascend levels of consciousness, you become aware of the levels of consciousness as you actively begin to untie the knots created by the mind. What are these knots? Anger, hatred, greed, all these are the knots created by the mind, and desire, of course, and passion, and those things, which extreme things that make a person want something, get frustrated if they don't get it, get angry, create havoc in their own lives, and then the havoc in the lives of others. So that is why we need to start divesting ourselves. So how can we start? Very simple. Look around you in your homes. Look at your own prayer altar or your prayer room. How much do you have? Do you need all that? As jnanis or those walking on the path of knowledge, you don't really need much. Keep the minimum things. In your house, do you need all those things? Especially if you're getting older, don't be attached to what you have. Be ready to walk away from the material things because all they do is bind you. You have gold and you think about the gold you have. That's keeping you bound. Be ready for it to go away. Give it to your children or whoever it is that you want to give it to. Give away the things. Keep what is basic that you need. Believe me, the less you have, the more you're able to focus on yourself. So with that, we are going to end today's discussion. We will start with the ascension of Kundalini as Agastya has explained in Agasthyar Vazhipaadu next week.